Hi, I'm Johnny from UltimatePaperMache.com, and I made a unicorn mask. I had to, because after I painted the dragon mask red, I realized he was kind of scaring me. So I repainted him in real sparkly greens and blues. And then I realized you can't just have one sparkly fancy mask. So the obvious companion for him would be a unicorn. But the problem with the unicorn mask is that they keep their eyes on the side of their heads, like horses do, and you wouldn't be able to see out. But I remembered that I had already made a unicorn. He's in my book on how to make masks. The way that I managed it when I showed you how to sculpt your own unicorn mask, here he is. I made this decoration. I decided that a young person would be able to give his or her favorite unicorn a piece of jewelry and hang it over the horn, and it would be made out of silver or gold or something. Because of the black areas, you can actually see out of two holes that I created in that decoration. So it looks pretty cool, I think. The pieces actually go together really fast, and the hard part for me was actually getting the mane on there. But there is one thing that I want to tell you about before you decide if you want to make this or not, and that is because of those holes that I put here so that you can see out. The problem was that for me anyway, it's really hard to cut through the paper mache, even using a brand new box cutter. Because when you make paper mache like I did with this fellow, it's a piece of cereal box cardboard that the pattern is made out of. And then I used brown paper and tight bond wood glues, really strong. But basically what you're doing when you use that method is you're creating a very thin layer of plywood. It's really strong with one layer. And I had a really hard time cutting those holes. It was hard for me to control where the knife was going. I was afraid it was going to slip and cut me. So that's just one thing to be considering before you decide whether you want to make a unicorn or not. That's not really a big deal, but I just want to make sure that you're safe. So let me go ahead and show you how the pieces go together, and in the next video I'll show you how I painted mine. Obviously you can just go ahead and make a more traditional white unicorn. That would have been a lot easier, but I played around. Actually used some spray paint. It was kind of fun. So let me show you how the pieces to go together, and in the next video I'll show you how I finished them. You start out by putting your pattern on cereal box cardboard and then cutting the pieces out. When you see these little darts on the inside of one of the pattern pieces or around the edges, then go ahead and tape those together first. And you also want to kind of wear out the pieces, kind of like this. Now this piece, there's a straight edge right here and a straight edge here, so bring those together like this. Tape it on the front and then turn it around and reinforce that seam on the back. You do that as often as you can. Now this piece along here, that's his upper lip, so just bend it backwards. Then do number 2 exactly the same way. Now we're going to tape them together right along the center seam. And now we're going to fill in those nostrils so that we don't have a big hole. We don't want anybody to just look in and see his brains. So we're going to fill those in with some aluminum foil. Tear off a couple of pieces of foil. Fold them up. Just crumple them very loosely. Yep, that one's kind of overly large, but that's okay, it'll fit. Now we're going to take our hot glue and put it in there all the way around that edge. So I got hot glue in there, and I'm going to just push this in without burning myself. Now we're just going to push that in. I use my fingers to start with. And then you can use the end of one of these pens. These work really good. Three and four are his chin and his lower lip. So bend this down, bend this over to meet it. Then we're going to finish up that dart. And now we're going to put them together. And now we put his chin down here underneath his upper lip. And make sure that this seams right here, make sure that those match up. We're going to have to do the taping from the inside to start with. You put a piece of tape right across that middle seam. Then line this up just along one side. You want to always match up the curves. And quite often it's easiest to do that from the inside when you're taping. Five and six go right next to the mouth, nose pieces. And eventually this part up here is going to bend pretty strongly, but that'll become really obvious when we put on a few more pieces. Seven and eight are going to go right up above five and six. Just start right up here at the front, then bend it over so it matches. Now remember I told you there's going to be a bend right there? One of the reasons is because you need this to be a dip in here. So it goes in and then up. Bending number 6 and then number 8 as well. Number 9, I put a piece of tape behind that short edge so that it kind of hold on. It's going to go back so that it's kind of flat along the top edge of his muzzle. Tape the darts together on 11 and 12 and then bend this part back. That'll make it fit right into that spot behind number 5. Taping it on the back this time because it was waving around so much. It's just easier to control if I turn it upside down like this. 13 and 14 go right above the cheek pieces, 11 and 12, and this little short edge goes right there in that little piece right there, and then they'll wrap around. '15 and 16 have a whole bunch of these darts, and then this corner is going to meet up right here with this top corner. Then you tape it on the inside like this so that it'll match that line right there, right above his eye. This corner, this is the corner of his eyes, and so you want to match those. Now we have to put this seam together, and this is going to be easiest to do if we just lay it right on the table. And then it's really easy to pull the two sides together. We're going to do that with the rest of the cap as well. And this little last piece is real easy to put together. We want to cut our foam ball. I just use a bread knife. Works really good. You can use a box cutter. It's about, 3 or 4 inches. You just want a kind of a noodle of foil that will look like a piece of skin. You give the area around the eye just a little bit of depth, so you have a nice shadow there. And I'm just flattening the bottom edge against the table. And it should be pretty much almost completely behind that piece and behind piece 15. Get out my fancy tool. Press it in. I'm going to sneak ahead just a little bit so you can see that it's really important to make sure that the balls don't stick out too far towards the center of your mask, because right here, that's the actual eye holes that you're going to be seeing out of, and you don't want this to bang up against your face. I got this one in just the right place because it's not going to interfere with your nose or your eyes or anything. But don't, if you would roll it a little bit too much, then it's going to get in the way. And push it so that it comes in contact with that glue. Now with some of the scraps of foil that I had used for the inside of the eye, I made some eyelids. Trying to make sure I got 2 of them the same. One of them way too long. There we go. I'm going to put the pointy end towards the center. '17 and 18 have really long darts, so we just have to tape those together. And it's easiest to get them to match up along those long curves if we start at the very end. And it takes a while. We just have to just keep taping. Then we want to tape them together along that long seam that doesn't have anything sticking out of it. And this is much easier to do if we just kind of grab the front corner first. Just tape those together so that they kind of hold still, and then just turn it over. We can just put it right on the table and then pull everything together and move back just a little bit. So you get to the point where it's really easier to turn it over again and do it from this side. The last piece, number 19, is going to match up with that little mark right there with the center line on the cap. The easiest way to make sure that everything fits is to start out on the ends, then go do the other side, then start taping from the center, kind of just pull them together. Now once you have everything together and you're trying it on, you may find out that the mask is just way too big. Depends on how big your head is. It fits me, but your head might be smaller. So if it is, then you can cut down this seam here, and you would have to cut all the way down straight and then overlap the 2 sides. But you don't want to make it too small because the paper mache is going to shrink just a little bit. And if you live anywhere in the northern hemisphere and you want to go trick-or-treating in late October, you probably want to wear a knit cap just to keep your ears warm. The cap will also help keep the mask from falling forward because that nose is fairly heavy, and it does have a tendency to pull the mask downwards towards the nose. But that's where you would cut it, right across there, right through the 19, and then just overlap that seam. But now we have to actually put it on the mask. Now I'm having to push down on it to get those pieces to come together. We want the center line of the cap and of the forehead to match up. Now his right ear and his left ear that I have marked, that means the right ear when you're looking at him, not his right ear. Unicorns don't go to school, so they don't know they're from right and left. Now, one way to tell where ears go on any kind of animal, so I assume that's true of unicorns as well, is you follow along the jawline. Now, some animals have ears just right here. That would be like us. See, here's Harry's jawline, and there's his ear. And then if this was a human, we would put the ear right there. But a lot of animals put their ears up higher, but it's always on that line. There's a little point that curves inward. I tore off a 3-foot piece of aluminum foil and then folded that into thirds. Then I folded that into a triangle and then just started rolling it up and ended up with a nice long horn that was thicker at the bottom and pointy at the other end. So here's what the horn that I made. And it's way too long, but I also want to kind of curl it up. I'm going to cut it off right about there. You need a really powerful tool to cut through crumbled foil. Just making a base for it because it's not wide enough at the bottom to have a real good hold. Yeah. I've got my hand under there supporting it because I'm pushing really hard. I don't want to push the mask out of shape. I'm all ready to start the paper mache, but I forgot something. I want to cover up the foil. I'm going to use brown paper just because I have a whole bunch of it. It comes in Amazon boxes. You could use newspaper. I'm going to use Titebond 2 wood glue because all you need is just one layer and it dries really fast. But you can use any kind of paper mache paste that you like. I got a whole bunch of recipes. You can find those on my website. Now you can use paper mache clay instead if you want to. It is going to be slightly heavier unless you put it on just paper thin. And I'll be back with you right after I get all this on here and it's dry.